Hello, and welcome to a video that everyone else has already made. We're talking about news. Doctor News. Who knew? Fuck's sake.
That was going pretty well until we started repeating the news stuff, I think.
I'm here with my friend Jack,
Hello.
which won't be confusing, and
No.
we're talking about the news that Russell T Davies is returning to showrun Doctor Who for the 60th anniversary and series beyond, whatever that means. I mean, this is something that is has basically never happened before, ever, in the programme's history.
I don't know any other shows that have got anything similar either, where like showrunners have left for a time and then come back almost to save it, essentially.
Yeah.
I'm sure there probably is an example of that somewhere, but like, this is big news even outside the Doctor Who community, I feel. I feel like people are like, oh god, Russell T Davies has come back, I might watch it again.
I literally thought it was like a joke.
Yeah.
When I saw it, I mean, obviously, because at first I thought it was like a BBC Doctor Who tweet, so I was like, oh, okay, there's going to be some news. Is this a Doctor announcement? Is this a new trailer? And then I just kind of stared at it with this feeling of like, what?
Utter confusion. Like,
yeah.
Because I didn't expect to hear who the new showrunner was going to be so soon.
Yeah.
Anyway. And yeah, I just didn't expect it to be Russell T.
It was kind of a really bizarre, pleasant surprise at first, but it's news that I'm not like blindly joyful by it. I'm not doubting Russell. I'm really intrigued, but I'm not going into this with the mindset that this is guarantee that the show is saved, or that he's even going to make the show the best thing ever, if that makes sense.
I think it depends, why is he actually coming back?
Yeah.
Is he coming back because they offered him a huge paycheck and it was like, alright, I'll do it? Or were they like, oh, we really want you to come back, and he felt obligated? Or has he sort of been away from Doctor Who for so many years, now he's like, oh, I'd like to go back to that, and there's a prime opportunity for me to make a comeback, and I've got all these new ideas again.
Yeah.
I think that all, because I hope it's the latter, that he wanted to do this and he's been planning for it, less so that the BBC were like, oh, we need to get you in, we need you to come in and sort it, because then it might not be what we're hoping it to be.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's a really nice idea, especially if it was that kind of, that passion and that itch and that, oh, I miss doing that show. Like, it was a nightmare running it, but I miss it. And it would be nice if that was a large percentage of why he came back.
Julie Gardner back as well, didn't he? Which I think is that's very promising.
I mean, yeah, they're now, I guess outsourcing, if that's the right term, the production to Bad Wolf Studios, which means it won't be produced by BBC Studios, which I think hasn't been the case. I'm pretty sure it's been produced in-house since the start of the revival. So this is like the first time it's been actually given to an exterior production company to work with, which is quite interesting.
It's going to be weird seeing how the quality does change.
Yeah.
Is it going to be like because what was it you said before about the HBO stuff? They're like in a deal with them potentially?
Yeah, okay, I don't know much about this exactly, but I know that HBO, there was apparently either leaked or revealed that they had signed contracts or deals for at least up to series 15, like some kind of distribution rights perhaps, and the Bad Wolf company is responsible for work on, I don't know to what extent, but work on his
Dark Materials?
That's it. I was going to say His Majesty's Secret Service. His Dark Materials, which is this kind of quite large budget like HBO production that's, I think, notorious for having quite impressive like visuals for a television show.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how it works exactly. I don't know where the money's coming from, but if there was more money put into it by HBO because of this deal, don't know if that's the case, that could be a good thing, potentially.
Yeah, and the show could look the best it's ever looked. So that's exciting as well.
Yeah.
And also, I've seen people being like, maybe he'll get Murray Gold back as well.
That
would be, because alright, so Russell T come back, pretty mad. Getting Julie Gardner back as well, that's quite crazy. If you've got Murray Gold, you literally are just like, here's everything that worked, let's bring it back.
Yeah. And that's something that I'm like, I do have mixed feelings on.
It's level evolution then, isn't it? It's more like,
yeah,
you don't want it to be samey.
Yeah, and that's why, at least based on what I've heard people say about Russell's subsequent TV work, and of course I think the way he brought back the show in the first place, like reading his pitch bible, it's reassuring that he clearly has a clear understanding of how to maintain the elements that make Doctor Who whilst progressing and reinventing the show for a new audience. And so I would hope that when it came to this, he would go into it with that same kind of excited mindset to go, okay, how do we make Doctor Who again, but still Doctor Who?
I don't think he was lucky when he brought back the show and was like, oh, this is the type of Doctor I want to do, and it just happened to work. I think he truly understood what made the show worked.
Yeah.
And if he knows that, there's no reason he can't come back and apply those same things in a new context with a new Doctor, because I'm sure we'll get to that, but that's... Whoever he casts still changes everything, I think, quite a bit, because there's still that discussion of, will it go back to being a man, or will it be someone of a different race? And I feel like Russell T will make a good decision there. Whatever he chooses, it won't be, I'm doing this because the BBC told me to.
Yeah.
I feel like, or even if he has to, he'll have a story there for them.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it, but the discussion of who should we cast at the next part, I completely understand why that is really important for some people. It's something where I'm literally at the point where, like, I just want someone who's going to bring a good performance to the part, someone who will do a good job of kind of embodying that character and potentially bringing something new or fresh to it. I don't care what they look like, within reason. I'll just so that doesn't sound dodgy, I will qualify that later, but I don't really care what they look like or what stance it's making. I just want someone who I'm going to be able to immerse myself in as the character at the end of the day. Yeah,
I feel pretty much the same. I think it would be good to, like, either do another female Doctor and I think explore that a bit better, because I don't think, unfortunately for Jodie, I don't think it was explored very well.
Yeah, and it could be done so much better, which is a shame.
Or a Doctor of a different race. I think there's a lot of story ideas you can explore there. But if Russell T was like, oh no, we're going back to basics and cast who we'd love to see, what's his name? Philip
Martin Brown.
That would be great. I'm happy to see anything, really.
Yeah.
I'm just pretty confident it'll be good on that front.
Yeah.
So one thing I feel most confident about with Russell T is the Doctor will be back as a character.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I did want to mention in this review is that obviously there's a huge buzz of excitement about this, and I'd like to say that even as a kid, I didn't love everything that Russell T did. I have plenty of issues with his era, as we've discussed many times. I also regard his era as just generally quite a few levels above what we've had in the Chibnall era anyway. Like, I do think it is by standard better television. It's just that I happen to dislike certain story choices or story decisions. If anything, I've grown to appreciate the Davies era more over time. I actually liked it less when I was younger, and coming back to reevaluate it after the Chibnall era, I think has given me a whole new appreciation for how well it is put together.
Yeah, I'm different to you in that regard, because when I was young, everything about the Russell T era was like the best. I liked every choice. To me, it was just like whatever was done was always entertaining. I was always really... But as, like, when we rewatched it all, obviously in the first lockdown, there were a few things that I was like, I'm not too sure. And there's a few episodes that are quite bad. But you always have with Russell T, like, a string of, like, solid episodes at some point.
Yeah, sometimes exceptional.
And I think he just knows how to plan the stories out, and he understands... That's another thing. He's done Doctor Who before.
Yeah.
He's gone through it, and he knows where things can go wrong. He knows what works. He's also got another 10 years or 15 years. How long did he leave? No, like 11 years or so, I think, of producing and writing other TV shows. He's more experienced than ever.
Yeah.
It could be even better, because now he's learnt his lessons and knows not to make certain mistakes.
Yeah, and that is really exciting. The reason why I brought up my history is just because there are a lot of people who I think have reservations or even critique people's response to this because they feel that you're all just blinded by nostalgia. But I do think there is a lot of potential in Russell coming back. It has somewhat worrying implications, because there's an element of the BBC being desperate and going, just go back to what worked before.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of this really rides on Russ to bring that kind of new spark and that ingenuity.
Can he save the show again? He'd done it once. Can he do it again? It's like history repeats itself, and it comes at a weird time. I think we spoke about in like media generally, where we've got Sam Raimi's coming back to do Doctor Strange, but Tobey Maguire's back. That's what's really popular, nostalgia.
Yeah.
So let's just bring it back. And that's nothing as well. Russell T has been saying, like all across lockdown, because he's been very much like he's a lot more vocal about Doctor Who. He's been saying, it should have a shared universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Excited and terrified by that, personally. I think what he did before worked really well, where he had like Sarah Jane, which we've now started, and that's really good. And Torchwood, which I dipped in and out of, and that had some really like good stuff, but some also really bad stuff. But that was like a good little. I remember being like a kid and being like, "Oh, Doctor Who's everywhere." But it covered all. You got the kids show, you got the family show, you got the mature show.
Yeah.
Keep that up. Keep it small. Like, I think you only need 3 or 4 shows. I don't want there to be like, oh, we're gonna do every companion. Well, they'll get a little like mini series at some point, and I'm sure it won't get to that point. But like, Marvel have set a trend that a lot of movie studios are following. I don't want to see the BBC follow it as well. I don't want Doctor Who to be like, oh, we've got to build up to this mega event that all this stuff has got a crossover with.
Yeah.
Because then you're losing Doctor Who a bit, I think.
I'd agree. I think it's good that kind of Davies still has that kind of desire and passion. He looks at where sci-fi and material like that is going and says, oh, how amazing would it be if we could find a way to transform Doctor Who into the kind of the same landscape that these pieces have evolved into, with these spanning spin-offs and universes. And yeah, I am both excited by that prospect because of what it could open up, but also slightly concerned in terms of, what if it gets too big? What if they start... And that, obviously, the more spin-offs you start running, the less attention and focus you take away from the main show, and then the main show could suffer.
Oh, definitely.
And I'd prefer to have a really strong series of Doctor Who as opposed to bits and pieces of like mediocre programs all over the place.
Yeah, and I should note as well, like, I'm huge on the MCU. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a really interesting way of like telling a story, but I don't think it on that scale is what you need for Doctor Who. I think if you're gonna have several shows, have like about 3 or 4. Like, I don't think you need to go overboard. Or I guess you could do not straight to TV films, but just like specials, I guess.
I think specials could be a nice idea.
That's one thing I'm really hopeful for, because I know Matt Smith and David Tennant said before about coming back to do Christmas specials.
Yeah.
Come on, Russell. Change the format. Give your Doctor a holiday at Christmas and bring back Matt Smith. Or do a David Tennant Christmas story, because that is money for the BBC.
Really nice idea.
Because I reckon if they announce, we're doing a Christmas special this year, but it's actually with David Tennant, all my family would watch it. I haven't watched Doctor Who for years. Like, but everyone was like, oh, David Tennant on at Christmas? Go on then, and you'd watch it. I think even the same with Matt Smith.
Yeah.
Not so much, even though it should be. But I think that would be really fun. I think Russell T's going to be like more willing to do stuff a bit out of the box. Whereas the last 2 series have felt quite mandated.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about the last 2 series then, I guess.
I mean, we're in very different positions with it because I only got back into Doctor Who after Lockdown 1. Yeah. And I caught up on it, and I didn't have to watch that for 3 years or however long it's been going on. Yeah. The only one I've seen is the New Year special. That's the only one I watched like live. So for me, I've got quite a narrow, I feel like, view on it because it all happened at once, whereas you've lived through it, you've survived. Yeah, it's been a hell of a journey, and I think there's a part of me that does find it really funny how it's panned out, and the fact that we've had this announcement of Russell T coming back that almost to an extent feels like an admittance of we done goofed. And back when Jodie was first announced, my fears generally, and I think like I discuss it in the video, my fears generally were like I want this to be done out of an interest of the character. Like, I'd like to think this is done because Jodie is cast because she's going to bring something really special to the role, and that they're going to do something interesting with the character. And I think basically I was just saying I just hope the writing is engaging and fun. I hope the casting is good. I hope the show is written well. I hope Chris Chibnall does a good job and it just carries it. And I hope this isn't done for the sake of shock. I hope it was done for a good, to be a good choice. And it's just really weird. And I think because of the media landscape at the time, the past year there was the Ghostbusters 2016 thing. Gender politics in film was under intense scrutiny at that time. And then you get to the Chibnall era. I think surface level is the perfect way to describe basically every aspect of the Chibnall era, because in terms of plots and
construction, they are almost essentially Who by numbers. And in terms of the political attempts at commentary, they're also really surface level. Like, it was a big excuse me. It felt like a massive kind of like kick in the face when, after having the kind of the heavy-handed Rosa episode, we then get this weird Donald Trump pastiche turning up in episode 4, and it's like, are they just trying to awkwardly shove in relevant like commentary but without actually saying anything?
Compare it to Russell T's Slovene two-parter.
Yeah,
the commentary difference there, where as a kid I didn't even realise.
Yeah.
But as a kid now, I'd go, oh, that's Donald Trump character and he's dumb and funny. It just feels so...
Yeah, because they don't really say much with him. I'm sure if you connected it, you could put something together about, oh, businesses and corporations like to make decisions that impact the environment. But it's just saying that's a thing that exists. By the second episode, you've already got the Doctor preaching about guns, which is, again, this weird surface level take on this kind of trait that was only ever emphasised that much through the 10th Doctor. But at least with him, there was usually a logic reason behind, it's not guns, it's killing people that he hates.
Yeah, if you look at the speech after, in The Doctor's Daughter, after Jenny dies, like, he's not just going, oh, guns are bad. He's saying, like, when you're weak and you use these and you kill people, like, there's no going back sort of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas Jenny's like, oh, don't use guns. It's like...
she just hates them by nature of their existence.
Again, it just feels, and obviously we'll get to Chibnall, because I am curious to how much of this is actually his fault.
Yeah.
And I also feel really bad for him. Even if every decision was his and he dropped the ball, I still feel bad for him. But it does feel like it was almost like the Doctor is witty, so have her be witty. Doctor doesn't like guns, so we'll have that. Have some historicals.
References and stuff.
The Doctor knows people from history, so every episode she needs to mention at least one person. I'm trying to think of an example with guns involved with Christopher Eccleston, but I feel like, I can't have an exact example, but I feel like he would be...
a good example would be Bad Wolf, when he comes in with the big fucking gun after he's burst out of prison, goes up to the guy, and the guy's like...
Yeah, so you can see two completely different approaches to the no gun.
Yeah.
And, like, it's done in interesting ways. Woven into the story, explores the character, and, like, Jodie's Doctor.
Yeah, like the whole debate at the end of Arachnids in the UK, well, the issue is that there isn't a debate, there's just a statement made, which is, guns are bad because they kill... That's it. But the way they dealt with the spiders is fine, even though that itself could have negative implications, locking them in that room. And the issue is not that she's morally dubious. The issue is that the program presents her as the figure of righteousness, this moral figure who is rarely questioned, or at least not consistently questioned enough by the characters or the narrative.
I guess the placement of Russell T taking over is also very interesting, because obviously Chibnall's having its final series, and then I guess the 100th anniversary boost. I won't say what it's called because I'll just get it wrong. And then you have Russell T coming back for the 60th, and then series beyond, whatever that means. Which I still think that's a little bit odd, that phrasing. Maybe it's because they haven't ironed out all the details.
Yeah.
But because it's being placed at such like a... You've got this huge special and another huge special, it's the perfect time to just completely change everything.
Yeah.
And I know they do that every time a showrunner takes over, because like, there's a very clear difference between like Russell T Davies and then Moffat and then Chibnall, but this can be like a complete hard reset, and there can be a time gap. I hope Russell T utilises that. Don't make it start immediately after Chibnall's story's ended. Show us a Doctor that's been at it for a while. We don't need to have the whole I need to figure out who I am.
Yeah.
Unless like he's got a very particular story, then fair enough.
Exactly.
I'm not saying, but it would be nice just to not have to have, oh, here's the special where the Doctor's unsure of if they're the Doctor or not, and they're I've got fingers, I don't want to hear any of those jokes again. Like
all the stuff that bogged down Chibnall's and Jodie's first episode, the stuff that I think made everyone when they watched it probably go, oh yeah, it's Doctor Who again. We definitely need to get away from that, because it will just feel like the show's spinning its wheels.
Yeah, and I think you can give Moffat a fair bit of credit there, because he did try to change things quite a bit while wrestling with the BBC like full on, because they were messing about mad. But when he was like, oh, this series is going to be all two-parters. Yeah. It's like a small change, but it does really like make that series stand out, and it led to some really cool ideas. Yeah. And that's another thing. We haven't really I haven't really thought about this, but all the format change.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question.
Because I could see Russell T being like, you know what, it's going to be more episodic, and it's going to be this series sort of deals with this story. Because isn't that the way this series is going? Series 13, it's meant to be like one story stretched out across.
Yeah, there's like, it's going to be a sort of one story across 6 episodes, I think.
To me, even with this series and then the whatever special, it just feels not enough time to wrap up all this Chibnall stuff. And that's what I'm like most... I'd be really surprised if the BBC were like, oh, Russell, we want you to keep these up. Is John Bishop's just been brought on? Is he going to stick around?
Yeah.
Or are the BBC going to be like, no, after the 60th, you've got... Or after the whatever special, 100th anniversary, you don't have to use them. In fact, we don't want you to use them. We don't want you to reference the Timeless Children. Or is Russell T going to be like, no, I'll keep the 2 companions, but I'll have a new Doctor. Or I'm actually going to see out the Timeless Children. And there's always been this talk of like Chibnall's master plan.
Yeah.
Clearly not going to come to fruition how he...
It does feel that way.
But it will be interesting to see, like how the format changes and how that transition actually happens. Even if they did a 6-part series that was 6 hours long. Could be interesting, could be really good, but then there is a part of me is, but when we got 12 40-minute episodes, you get a lot more mileage with your stories.
A lot of variety.
But I do also realise that format is quite outdated now.
Yeah.
I don't know how Russell T feels about that. If he is saying, oh, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is how it should be done, does he mean that just by how many properties there are? Does he mean even how they tell the stories?
Yeah.
It's one of those things, the last like month has been great, because it's like, oh, Chibnall's leaving, Joe's like, oh, there's so many questions. It's, all right, and Russell T's coming back, it's like, all right, I've got double the amount of questions.
Yeah. And
then they're going to announce the Doctor, and I'm going to be like, well, this doesn't narrow it down at all. Now I've got all these questions. It feels like the next few years are going to be really long. And also, we've still got no announcement on when this final series is coming.
Yeah,
it's got to be
that's
soon.
so weird.
And it does make you wonder, like, are they delayed? Because I feel like behind the scenes there must be chaos. It just seems like this isn't going as smoothly as they're like showing it to be, because otherwise I feel like we'd have more Chibnall promotion. It's
very weird, because you can, watching some Chibnall episodes, there is this feeling that they're trying to scrape the show together at times. Like Orphan 55 and Can You Hear Me have elements of that where it's very weirdly put together and seems a bit rushed.
Orphan 55 you can talk about in great detail about what that is even trying to be.
Yeah.
The story and the way it's written and the actual execution is...
Yeah, so it's just this kind of... It's weird, because I think we both do feel bad for Chibnall now at this point. And prior to this, I think when we were in the thick of it, there was this kind of what felt like a smugness almost from like the Doctor Who department or like the BBC. I think because this series was nosediving in the way it was, and yet they were still keeping up this kind of everything's rosy and fine kind of facade, and oh, it's great and everyone loves it kind of thing. And weirdly, the critic reviews weren't that negative, which I just don't understand at all.
When it was announced that Chris and Joey were leaving, they had that guy come on for the BBC, and he was like the entertainment correspondent, I think, for the BBC, and he was like, yeah, everyone's loved it. It's been really positive. No, let's be honest. It's still done well ratings-wise, and it's still done well, like you said, some critics. But it's not been a perfect reception. Yeah. A lot of people have not enjoyed it. That's one of those things that, like, you don't get that. The BBC won't admit their faults for another few years.
Yeah.
They'll give it a few years, and then they'll whack it onto some, like, DVD. Pay 30 quid, you can see what really happened.
Love that.
It's like with Moffat, he, like, came out after he left being like, oh, actually, it was hell. Because they were like, you've got to do the 50th. And you also got to do Sherlock. And then Chris Chibnall was like, I'm giving up the Christmas special. So he's like, no, don't worry, I'll do it. And
yeah,
that didn't take long for that to come out. So how long until Chibnall can be like, you know what, actually, I didn't want to do any of this stupid stuff, but they made me.
Yeah, that's what I'm really looking forward to. And I think if they had announced just a different showrunner, someone else, it would have felt like, okay, yeah, this is the BBC making their next step with Doctor Who. They're not giving up on it yet. I guess we'll just see what they've got in store for us. And I think there'd be a feeling of they could easily make the same mistakes all over again. The fact that they've gone with Russell T, it has this weird feeling when it both comes across as this admittance of, yeah, we fucked up. I think purely because of, and you can see it from like the media storm it's already generated, like the way people are responding to it. It's like they needed someone who would have that reassurance with them to get people to come back and invest in the show. And it makes it feel less like a move that's out of, here's our creative new vision for the show, and more like, the show's slipping out of our hands and we need to fucking do something about it. We need to reclaim people that we've lost.
And in a way, it does feel like they're using Chibnall as a bit of a scapegoat.
Yeah.
Like, because they can just say... And they're not necessarily like blame Chibnall, but the way they've announced this and the reception, there's only one person who is going to get blamed, and it's going to be Chibnall. It's not going to be anyone else. And it's like I said, I don't know how much this was his... I refuse to believe that this is how he wanted to do it, but I do think some story decisions probably were him.
Yeah.
And I feel like he did drop the ball a bit. However, God, it must feel awful.
Yeah.
It must feel awful having the show probably taken away from you, or you've gotten to the point where you're like, this is hell, I don't want to do this anymore, and suddenly it's Russell T's the guy before you, the guy that you used to work for and used to write stories for, you're going to get him back, and everyone's going to love it. How does that make you feel? Like, it's going to... Honestly, worry for the guy, because that must feel awful.
And this is a show he's been passionate about since he was a little, like, condescending teenage boy.
He's been on the fan shows being like, oh, I think it could be better, and now he's arguably one of the, like, biggest memes of the community.
He is probably the most reviled voice behind Doctor Who since John Nathan Turner at this point.
I think it's worth keeping in mind that when that was the case, you didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
Every tweet he might have seen, because if you're in his position and you're like, oh, how people, I'm gonna look at the community, and you just see, thank fuck Chibnall's gone. How, whatever his name is, didn't have to deal with that. He's probably got like fan mail, and at conventions he might have had people.
Yeah.
But no matter where Chibnall looks, he's probably being like reminded that people don't like what you did.
Yeah, and
I hope he doesn't, like, ultimately. And like I said, I'm not a fan of Chibnall. I feel like he gave it his best. I hope he gave it his best. He gave it a go. Don't beat yourself up too much.
Yeah.
It's a shame it didn't go the way you wanted. But...
I mean, I think one reason why I was so impassioned and felt driven to really talk about this era is I feel like this year there's been much more of a general consensus that's come in as to the overall quality of Chibnall's run. And I think with the whole announcement of his departure and the way it's got on everyone, there's a large majority feeling that this is for the better. But I think, especially initially in those first 2 years, especially because not many general people were watching it, it was really hard to actually have discussions about why I didn't like the show without either people jumping to conclusions about you don't like it because the Doctor's female, as well as there were a lot of people, like, in my life who were even quite positive feeling towards the show, or I didn't encounter it online and so forth, and it did give me this feeling of, especially because I felt so strongly towards it, and because that so many things became clearer to me over time, like why I didn't enjoy this characterization of the Doctor, and why the show felt difficult to watch sometimes, like claustrophobic, or I didn't know where I was in a scene. And yet at this point I've almost got so much of it out of my system, and so many other people have. I'm almost like fatigued. I'm almost like everyone knows the Chibnall is bad now, and this is like the cherry on the top that's confirmed that it's bad.
You just want to move on. You just want to get on with Doctor Who and see how Chibnall ends this and just move on.
I really do feel bad for him now.
We don't really consider, like, how COVID, like, no other Doctor Who show would have had to deal with that. Like, came in the middle of his series, or his, like, tenure as showrunner, and probably stole his, like, final chance from him. Because I reckon originally, series 13 was probably, like, his chance to prove that things were okay.
Yeah.
And sorry, global pandemic, so you're getting less episodes. We also want you gone, finish it off. Like, we don't know if he, like, stepped forward, because I think there's, in that interview or panel maybe, or the interview after, oh no, because they didn't announce it at the panel, did they? They had the panel, which was like series 13. A few days later it was like, we're both leaving. We always only want to do 3. No way, I don't believe that. Maybe Jodie,
right. Maybe Jodie,
but I don't feel like it'd be like, oh, we'll do 3 years and you'll leave. I reckon it was more, we'll do 3 years and see where we're at. But not Chibnall. He seemed to have a plan, and this seems too rushed.
Yeah,
this does not seem natural or what he planned. That's another thing. We're jumping all over now, but with Russell T, what comes back? I really cannot wait, and we've got to see the Slovene again.
I hope so.
It's his best creation, if you ask me.
They're very iconic.
And if they really are leaning into this idea of, like, oh, Russell T's back and Doctor Who's back, bring back the Slovene. Like, but also there's all the talk of, like, well, when he done it before, he brought back Sarah Jane. Well, he can't bring back Rose. He can't bring back Donna because of story stuff. He's not going to bring anyone from the specials like that thief lady. He's not going to bring back John Barrowman as Captain Jack.
Yeah.
We've already done him loads and it'd be a bit awkward. You're not going to bring back Mickey because that leaves one person. We're getting Martha back, surely. Martha's got to have
I would hope so.
I'd even take her as a companion again. Give her another... I know that sort of goes against what I said before. I want them to do something new. But I always feel like Martha got a short end of the stick with... Is that the same? I don't know. Drew the short straw, that's it.
Yeah.
Where she had, like, a good story, but it was I love the Doctor, and it made sense with Russell's like plan because he wanted that was after Rose. But it'd be good to have a story where she's not necessarily like in love with the Doctor and just trying to impress him. Have a story where she's standing on her own 2 feet.
There's that kind of thing where it's like, to an extent, you could ask, would that be spinning your wheels, or would that be doing something the show really hasn't done before, which is what if you brought a previous companion back for a more extended period of time with a new Doctor and explored that relationship again.
Yeah,
they haven't done that.
It's a whole new power dynamic because now it's not like the Doctor can just be like, oh, I'm going to show you this and dazzle you. Martha knows the Doctor. In fact, she's probably like one of the most... Sarah Jane always looked back quite fondly, and like we've been watching Sarah Jane, like how she talked about the Doctor, like, oh, he's amazing, I wish I could travel him, but I can't. I feel like Martha's going to be more like, no, actually I left.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can be a right prick. And you know what? I've been on Earth for the last 10 years, saving Earth and doing whoever knows what.
COVID vaccinations.
You don't have control over me.
Yeah.
We're going to butt heads. And that could be so good.
You've got conflict, which is something they desperately lacked in the Chibnall era.
And I think they should explore political themes. I feel like Martha's got, again, not the best treatment. Like, you got the William Shakespeare episode where the Doctor, she's, I'm not white, is this going to be okay? And the Doctor's, oh, just act confident.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
No, that doesn't make sense. Like, you should, and you can lean into that.
Yeah.
Have Martha be like, no, you never really took my issue seriously. And now, and that will depend on who the Doctor is at that point. Because that conversation completely changes if we've got a white male, or if we've got a woman, or we've got a person who's not white. That conversation changes with each one. That's so interesting. Will we get that? Probably wishful thinking. I imagine bringing Martha back is, if it's going to happen, it'll be like a Sarah Jane-esque story. But you know what? I would love to have a Martha Jones like spin-off show. That would be brilliant.
I'd like
that. That'd be really good.
Freema could do it, absolutely.
She could be like the head of Torchwood or something. Like, if you're going to bring Torchwood back, which...
That would be cool.
We're probably going to get more Unit again. Unit's coming back, aren't they?
Yeah, I think there's like a thing.
I don't know, it felt like Chibnall did try to like reinvent a lot of things for not a lot of good reasons.
Yeah.
I think, I'm going to get rid of Unit, and actually Gallifrey's destroyed again. I feel like Gallifrey's fine, guys, don't worry. Unit's been funded by the government again. Like, it's maybe he won't.
There's a part of me that wonders whether he will take the opportunity to somewhat kind of brush aside or just not address certain things like that from the chip. Because here's the thing, the Chibnall era already managed to not address certain things when it brought the Master back. So, as much, it might pain Davies to do, but with how much of a kind of a mess so many aspects of the era, kind of Chibnall era, ended up with, I could see him very easily being like, look, this is about storytelling and Doctor Who first. I'm not going to spend my time trying to weave plots to fix stuff from another era. I'll just try and let it fall into place naturally.
Like I said earlier, if he uses like a time skip between like the 100th special to the 60th, you can sort of gloss over that a bit. So many questions on not only where Russell will take it, but what are his limitations, what are the BBC mandating. He has even spoke to Chibnall. Do you reckon those two have sat down together and he's been like, this is what I want? Like, have they even spoke? Like, there's no way of knowing.
That's so weird, because it's obviously they were friends, I think, or did have
worked together.
They worked together. So is there any animosity there? Has Chibnall had to hand over plans to Davies, who will now re-engineer them?
Yeah, does Chibnall... This is getting into a whole new like realm of discussion, which isn't even about office politics. It's like, is Chibnall mad at Russell? Is he glad that Russell's taken it off his plate? Because no one seems to like being the showrunner, do they?
It like kills anyone who does it seems.
Yeah, and it's just, have they even... Because what you really want is them to sit down and for Chibnall to be like, well, this is what I'm trying to tell, and this is where it's going to be. How are you going to pick it up? But are they at that level, or is the BBC like controlling it? And they're like, because unless Russell T or Chris like reaches out to one another, there could be this whole thing the BBC are keeping it separate, and it's like, we'll get that for you, this is what you'll do, and you don't need to have a meeting with Chibnall. No, don't worry about it.
Yeah,
I feel like Russell T seems like a pretty decent guy. I feel like he would sit down with Chibnall. I guess this is the sort of stuff that will come out in the months to come. And are we going to get Chibnall on Russell's writing team at any point? Is he going to continue to? I feel like he's probably going to be cast out by the BBC for Doctor Who at least.
Yeah, honestly, my head just feels like it keeps going around in circles at this point, because there are just still all these questions, and there was a lot to Chibnall's run that was bad, and I just want to know why. Is it purely down to, was it a lack of time? Was it a lack of skill, not to be rude? Was it attempting to jump through hoops to appease the BBC and ultimately damaging what he wanted to do? And the fact that it's been given back to Russell. And then there were all these questions about what does that mean? What is he going to do with it? My brain's melting at this point.
Just so many possibilities of like, you could talk about all of this just endlessly. Like, just Chibnall, just Russell, the transition between the two, how the BBC play into it, the audience reaction. Yeah. Like, because there is a part of me, even if the Russell T stuff, like, I feel like there's going to be a layer of, like, once again, you can't really criticise this because, like, we just had Chibnall, like, Russell T's perfect. I don't want that. I don't want another, like, cult to fall. Yeah. I want this to be the best it can be, and I think in many ways Russell T can deliver on that. Yeah. But there's a lot of variables. There's so many variables here that it's, like, almost impossible to, so, like, I'm excited. I'm really excited for the future of the show. I think it could be the best thing that's happened to it since the revival, but there's a lot to be sceptical about.
Yeah, like, it's very surreal, and it's something that I think still hasn't even I've not even managed to quite fully comprehend, but the one thing that does give me that reassurance is the fact that he has demonstrated in the past that he understands how to reinvigorate the show, and that... Hang on, brain gone again. The fuck was I just talking about?
So the possibility of Russell, and it could be the best thing ever, it could be the worst.
I've not entirely comprehended it, but he has shown a talent for reinvigorating the show.
I do think the odds are in his favour. Yeah. Like, I think that there's a very high chance this will be good. And I think it is just quite exciting. Like I said, I have not been present, really, with Doctor Who until the very end. Yeah. But even for me, it's, oh, fuck. It's going to be back. That's another thing that I think makes this new era, like the Jodie era, not work so well for me, is 9 to 10 to 11 to 12 feels like a constant evolution. Yeah. The way 10 acts is as a result of what happened to 9. And when 11 comes along, he's full of ego because he's just being the 10th and he's the best thing in the world. Yeah. And that's his arc. And then you get to 12 and he's just jaded, he's sick of it, he's gone back to the 9th. Well, it's not so much the Time War, but like everyone he knows dies and he never wins.
I like that kind of revelation he has at the end of his first season where he's, you're all bigging me up, I'm not anything big, I'm just a person travelling about trying to help out if I can. Which was, it's nice, that sentiment. And he starts to take a look at himself more introspectively and go, am I a good person? As much as at the time I just wanted more fun from the series, I can respect what they were doing with the character.
And maybe you can make a link from Peter comparing to Jodie with that being like, well, Jodie's, I am a good person. But personally it feels less of an arc and less a continuation of the Doctor's journey, more like, okay, Doctor's a woman now, we're gonna change everything, and she is gonna be the archetype for all Time Lords, and it's gonna be interesting. This is a brilliant segue. The next Doctor, are they gonna be influenced at all by this Jodie stuff? How is Jodie's Doctor gonna inform the next Doctor purely from a story point of view? Because Russell seems to understand that's important, but you might use a time gap to completely evade that. Yeah. And it all depends on who you pick. Because if it goes back to being a man, it's a completely different story. If it stays as a woman, you can try to explore some of the things you didn't with Jodie and maybe dwell on that. And that all depends on who they cast next and why they cast them. Because is it going to be BBC mandate or is it going to be Russell's choice? And ultimately, I think that's the biggest thing the show has yet to like announce is this next Doctor, because it does change everything no matter what way it goes. Yeah. And each avenue has a positive and a negative, I think. Because I would love for them to cast another woman as a Doctor and to really explore that and explore how that changes the Doctor and how, you know, that change of gender will make it difficult when you travel back in time. It's going to be, you've taken that privilege from the Doctor. Or is it like Jodie where it's not really explored? And that's the same can be said for like a non-white Doctor. You've got the same pros and cons there. And if you go back to a white male Doctor, I do think you sort of miss out on some really good story opportunities. But if Russell T chooses that Doctor for some reason to tell a story that's worth telling, then do it. Like,
yeah,
I would love to see. We've spoken about. I would love to see Philip Martin Brown just for one series as a soft reset, and then have him change into a woman. I think that'd be brilliant. Like,
yeah,
go back to the cranky old man and explore the same political issues, but with him. I think you can't just change the gender and be like, oh, job done, which I feel like is what Chibnall did.
Yeah.
You have to change it with intention and then change the story. And I'm hoping that Russell T can do that at the next Doctor.
I think it's tricky because in terms of say like casting a Doctor of a different race, it depends on how they handle that. It's a really tricky subject to navigate, I think, because it's one of those things where the Doctor as a character can't truly experience discrimination. They are always a privileged character, because unlike those in whatever time period they visit where they'll be discriminated, the Doctor can go, screw, I'm off. I'm going back to the TARDIS. It would be nice for the way it could pose conflict, but the Doctor can never truly understand that experience. And it's why, if you are going to navigate those issues, the question is how and if and to what extent. And I think where the Chibnall era did stumble with it is that it's towing without actually dedicating to it and actually doing enough of it, which made it feel flippant and disposable, and it doesn't really matter, but they still wanted to pay lip service to it. I feel that because Doctor Who is a show that will have to abandon its more difficult or harsher subjects for something that's just more fun, I wouldn't blame someone for wanting to cast a Doctor of a different race or a different gender and just make them the best version of the Doctor character they can be, without having to go, we need to make sure we explore how they affected in those time periods, just because as much as it can pose a limitation, it's just not the same as actually exploring what it's like to be that gender or that race.
I think, if you cast like someone who's not a white male, I think you've got to have some exploration of it, but it hasn't got to be the arc, hasn't got to be the focus of every episode. I think it almost makes sense, let's say with Jodie's Doctor, it would have made sense that when she's in a historical, she faces those issues more, but in a sci-fi setting, maybe not so much, because it's obviously issues of race and gender and sexuality are still present in sci-fi stuff, but like, it's almost a bit optimistic, isn't it, being like, in the future we're a bit better and we don't have to worry about people calling Jodie a witch. It's about striking that balance, and again, I think it is something that Russell T could do. I don't think he would fumble that. And it's interesting because I feel like he always handled politics really well. Yeah. But when he did handle politics, it was never the focus, it was never the whole point of the arcs the Doctor went through were about the character. Yeah. And when politics came up, like in the Slovene episode or in another episode, can't think of one off the top of my head, like, it's a part of that story, but it's not like the be-all end-all of the Slovene. The Slovene also stand on their own 2 feet, it's just, metaphors and smart writing. And there's also an element, I think, as well, with casting a Doctor of a different race. It's difficult because the Doctor hasn't necessarily experienced that history isn't their history, if you know what I mean. Yeah, absolutely. Just because you make the Doctor, say, black doesn't mean they suddenly, ultimately, they're not a human. Yeah. They don't suffer, like you said, they can just get in a TARDIS and leave. Yeah. They don't necessarily, their lives haven't been affected by their race yet. Yeah. That's what makes, I think, it very difficult to handle, but also potentially really interesting, like, narrative, because, like, again, very surface level, just be like, oh, the Doctor's black now or a woman, and that means it's going to be harder. You've got to explore why. Yeah. And you get in some really big topics there with, like, racial discrimination throughout history. Yeah. And different nationalities and how every nationality is different and everyone's got their own history. So you don't want it to be basically another Jodie, where it's, like, really surface level. Yeah, I think the fundamental issue is when it comes down to, especially the Jodie, when it comes down to 13, it's as a basic character, she wasn't really developed enough. Like, she was inconsistent, she tended to consist of these very kind of irritating surface level quirks. She was often quite ineffective in situations and very emotionally driven, and not in a way where it felt like these were either attempts to progress the character or explore the character, nor were they it weirdly comes around the same time that the Doctor was made a female character, that they then become this less confident, less effective version, which is a shame. And so she needs to be just a more engaging,
sparkling, enigmatic, fun character as a basic level. And then the political commentary needs to make sure that it doesn't treat it with the same surface level flippancy. You need to make sure that if you're going to explore these themes, you're really careful about what you do, because otherwise you end up with a Rosa, where you've got Krasko from the future who's a massive racist, or the Witchfinders, where the Doctor acknowledges that it's a bit shit, but then just brushes it off, and it doesn't really change her view or anything about the character.
It's one of those things, it's another variable. Like, the future of the show is completely defined by that, and not only who you pick and how you do it, like the approach you take to it, if you make it the forefront of the character, or if you make it just not a quirk, that's not the right word, but like an element of their characterization. It all depends on who they cast and who you want them to cast, because there will be some people who will be disappointed if it's no longer a woman.
Yeah,
they'll think it's a step back, and it must be also difficult in a way for BBC, because either we stick by it or we try something new. But if we try something new, it's almost like admitting defeat. You don't really want to do that.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Yeah, it depends who they cast, and like I'm quite on this next bit. Who should they cast? Honestly, not a clue, because there's never been a Doctor that's been cast and I've been like, oh, that's who I would have thought. Because I was way too young with Christopher Eccleston. He was just the Doctor. Same with David Tennant. When they got Matt Smith, he was like pretty much a nobody. Oh, not a nobody, but he had a very small career. When they got Peter Capaldi, it was a bit more, I recognised him as an actor, but still I was like, oh, fair enough. When they got Jodie, I was like, I'm not someone who's, it needs to be this person. I think that I've got two. Obviously, I've mentioned Philip Martin Brown. I think he'd be amazing, and I do think Rupert Grint would be able to give it a good go. But that's the thing I feel with anyone who's like, oh, who would you cast as a Doctor? It's almost like I'm gonna say any celebrity and try and make a case for it, because I think you can make a case for, not saying that all would be good, because I don't think anyone can play the Doctor. I think there's a certain, but you'll get people be like, oh, Emma Watson will be a great Doctor. Or you probably, all the Harry Potter cast will probably be like, oh, Daniel Radcliffe. No, but like you could make an argument for it.
Yeah.
And for me, it's almost overwhelming, because especially now when you open it up and it's like, I haven't got to be a white man anymore. It could literally be anyone. So how do you cast that?
Yeah, definitely.
And there's a few favourites always, like I always see a lot of Michael Sheen like thrown about. Obviously Ollie Alexander, who was in It's a Sin. That's like a big one, isn't it? Because that was rumoured when Jodie left, and now Russell T's doing it. It does seem likely, but I haven't seen him.
It does make you. It makes you wonder, because he was involved with Russell recently, and there was all this hubbub. Yeah, could that be a possibility? Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, if it was him,
I literally know nothing about him. I know that he's in It's a Sin, and it was a very well received show. And didn't we learn that he's also a singer?
He might
Isn't
be
he part of the band. I've got like no real negative thoughts. I guess I've got nothing against him. Like he's clearly a good actor, because he's in It's a Sin. He's worked with Russell T. I think that's a good combo to start with. Would he be my first pick? Probably not, because I don't know much about him. But like I said, you could probably say anyone to me and I'll be like, yeah, I can see how. Like when people are like Olivia Colman, I can see how you'd maybe think she'd be a good Doctor. But like personally, wouldn't actually be for it. I think she's almost in a way become too big. I think you can't be a huge actor to be the Doctor. I think because I've seen people be like Idris Elba,
Tilda Swinton.
Yeah, and it's just because I don't get,
because they're like British and in things.
Yeah, and I think having someone like, I don't know, like Idris Elba or Tilda Swinton, it's like I won't recognise them as a Doctor. I'll see them as Idris Elba or Tilda Swinton. Yeah, that's the big issue for me. That's maybe why Ollie Alexander's great in many ways, because I don't have any like preconceived notions about him. He just would be the Doctor. Whereas maybe if you did get Rupert Grint, it would be like
Ron.
Oh, it's Ron playing the Doctor, or Philip Martin Brown would be like, it's Grantley playing the Doctor. But like, I think that's good.
Yeah,
it's a weird one,
because I did some research into Ollie, because I was curious, because obviously he has been rumoured, and he's very much a casting choice that I am in two minds about, because on a completely superficial level, and this is what I meant when I said to an extent about how an actor looks, is that he's got an incredibly youthful face. He's actually older than both Matt Smith and Peter Davison were when they started the role, yet he looks about 10 years younger. And so there's something about this kind of incredibly youthful face that, at least on initial appearance, I go, I'm not sure if I can see that as the same character who's this, centuries, millennium, however old, Time Lord. At the same time, I looked up a little clip of him in It's a Sin, where he was delivering this kind of quite extensive monologue kind of thing, And he had this very good kind of kinetic energy to him, like the way he was reeling off this dialogue and kind of moving throughout the scenes. I was like, okay, yeah, he's handling this kind of barrage of words in a way that's... You understand everything, it doesn't feel forced, it's not laboured like Jodie's would be when she'd have to reel off a lot of stuff, and there was a really good energy to it. And I'll confess that back when Matt Smith first was announced, that first interview of him, and it's like, who is this? It looks like some weird scene emo teenager.
Even in his first scene,
yeah,
he hasn't quite... Obviously he's not got it because it's his first scene doing it, but I remember watching that and being like, I'm not sure about it. Especially there's that bit where he spits on the TARDIS. That always grossed me out as a kid, and I was like... Ugh. But then Matt Smith is now my favourite Doctor, and I think part of that is because like I know him and nothing else.
Like ultimately what Matt Smith did in the end is he brought that incredible energy where he sold that idea of this being someone really old in a young person's body, and perhaps Ollie would be entirely capable of pulling off something similar to that. I know that Tania Miller has been suggested quite a lot.
What would I know them from?
I think she played the general the guy who regenerated, and she stands up and she's like,
how'd
you have all that ego or something. I think people have suggested her, which I've not seen her in much, if anything, really.
I've got up, by the way, the odds, because they're always, I think, quite good to go off. So top of the list is Ollie Alexander, 2-1, but we discussed him. Next up is Chris Marshall, 11-2.
So they're bringing him back from the last round.
Because isn't he been in it?
He's not been in it, but he was the one that was rumoured the last time when they were like, who are they going to cast for 13?
After that, you've got Michaela Cole, I May Destroy You. And then next up, her odds are 8-1. Next up is Paul McGann, 10-1. I think that's very high up. That's very
strange.
We spoke about like because some people are like, Tennant could come back, and it's please don't do that.
Please don't.
Because here's the thing. The Doctor regenerating back into a past self, I'm not fully against. If you can do it well, and it's a short thing, like maybe 1 or 2 series, yeah, but not Tennant.
Yeah.
Tennant is too big and too good. Like we've had too much of him, I think, and like
it would feel like the ultimate admittal of we just want to go back.
The public still haven't got over him.
Yeah.
Whereas if you bought someone like, I guess really the only options would be like 11 or 8. You couldn't really bring back anyone older.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be against that. I'd love to see 11 again, but that's just... But yeah, it would have to be done really well, not overstay its welcome. But I'm surprised to put Paul McGann
I'd love to see just something else with Paul in. One thing that's a shame is that at this point, like, Paul held on to his like youthful appearance for so long, but it's been nearly 10 years since the 50th, and as he's going to be getting older, and he's nearly the same age as Capaldi, so it's...
Yeah.
Soon he won't be able to as effortlessly slip back into the role as we might hope.
Yeah.
I just wish they'd do something else with him.
Michael Sheen is next up, 12-1.
Okay.
And then after that, David Harewood, 14-1, who was actually in The End of Time. He's like the Prime Minister or the President. He hires the Master, and he's like, you're going to build this so my daughter can live forever.
Oh, okay. I literally don't remember that subplot.
Kelly MacDonald, who was in Line of Duty. I think that's why she's on it, because that was a really popular BBC show.
I recognise her.
Again, not seeing her. That's the list.
Yeah,
let me find like a fan casting.
This is the issue,
one.
is that I've always struggled to come up with who should play the next Doctor, and I've always felt very apathetic when someone suggests someone, because I'm always just, I don't know what they'd bring. The most certain I've been in recent years about someone I'd like is Philip Martin Brown, which is a shame, because that's ultimately what a decent chunk of the fandom would hate to see back in the role, or at least feel very disappointed.
Yeah, I've never felt that way, like being like, this guy would be actually brilliant. Like I can see him in the role.
Yeah.
When I think maybe that's why. So, for context, Philip Martin Brown plays a character called Grantley in Waterloo Road.
Yes.
He's a very grumpy teacher. Maybe that's why I like that character so much, because he actually reminds me of the Doctor a bit.
It could be.
It sort of would make sense.
And that's one thing where I think, as well, New Who has, I think, set a bit more of a template for how the Doctor is. At least I feel like we saw the ultimate fruition of that idea of the modern Doctor with Jodie's Doctor. Because Classic Who, you could argue that they blend together a bit more towards the end, maybe. But you've got, a grumpy old man, you've got the clown, you've got this kind of dandy, you've got this bohemian, you've got this young kind of dashing person, and even then, pompous and arrogant versus mastermind manipulator with this real dark side to him when it comes out. And then the modern Doctors, I do feel there's a lot of difference between Tennant and Matt Smith, but there's a lot of what you could call superficial similarities that are what most people would go, that's the Doctor. And they try to put a bit of that into like Capaldi's performance at times. And when you get to Jodie, it feels like the ultimate kind of, this is what people think the Doctor is. Oh, they make historical references, they say quirky things, all that. And I'd like an idea of a Doctor that isn't just going to be doing the same thing again, isn't just someone who can say quirky things and is British, but someone who would have just a new dimension for the character.
I do think one thing we have gotten away from now, and I think you sort of had, it really affected Capaldi's casting the most, but after Tennant, it was very much like, oh, heartthrob. And Matt Smith, like, still played it, especially with Moffat's when he gets well weird and flirty. Yeah. It was always a bit of a, I don't like the new Doctor, he's old and wrinkly. But then, like, you had Capaldi, and now you had Jodie, and I feel like a lot of Doctor Who fans have matured as well. I feel like there's a whole new age bracket for Doctor Who fans. So before, you had the kids, and then you had the old fans.
Yeah.
Now you've got the old fans, the revival fans, and the kids.
Yeah.
And the revival fans, I think, have matured a bit, and they understand a bit more, and it's, oh, the Doctor hasn't got to be dashing man.
Yeah.
And that's quite good, because I think that means moving forward, the casting should be a bit more open with what they can do. But we haven't really spoke about that, and probably won't have time because we need to end soon.
We've been talking for nearly 2 hours.
It is a new weird dynamic where you've got three groups of like fans now, where you've got the classic fans, revival fans, and then new people that will grow up with this, because that's the one thing I think Russell T understands best about the show. It's a family show, and it's a staple of British television. I think it could return to that height again. I've seen people like tweeting and making jokes about, I can't wait until I walk into the store and I see the Doctor Who magazine, I see the Doctor Who trading cards, and the kids are like talking about the new episode of Doctor Who, and there's a new monster that's like as big as the Weeping. I really hope we get back to that, like proper Doctor Who mania again. Would be sick. But it's interesting, there's now 3 different groups you've got to please.
I'm having a weird like game theory moment a little bit.
We love a game theory.
Because you know how, I'm just trying to analyse how we got to this point, because obviously Russell T Davies era, as much as there were aspects of the show that at the time I wasn't overly keen on, I was one of the few people in the country who couldn't wait for David Tennant to regenerate, purely just because it meant a new perspective, new energy, a new breath for the show. Doctor Who was still massive consistently throughout that time. There were all the figures, there were all the toys, and
all the shows.
It carried over a little bit into the start of Moffat, but then obviously by the 50th and then by the end of Capaldi, it was dwindling. And I'm thinking, do you think the whole female Doctor was like literally at that time was a ploy by the BBC to think, we're losing some interest in the show, this will bring interest back if we try and make the show more fitting to what's currently being discussed in the media, more contemporary?
Without a doubt, I think that's what the BBC did. You can ultimately, I think doing a female Doctor was the right step, and it was a cool idea, and it has so much potential. But you can't tell me the BBC did it for the right reasons. They did it. Ultimately, the BBC are all doing all their creative decisions for one reason: to make money. The BBC, as much as we'd like to think we pay our government tax to them to be like, you provide the British people with quality TV, the BBC's in trouble, right? There's a lot of anti-BBC like discussion at the moment. Get rid of the licence fee, let people over 65 like not have to pay it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you can look at these 2 events and they're completely unconnected, but I will bring Doctor Who back, I'll bring Waterloo Road back. 2 shows from at the same time were both really popular at the same time.
Yeah. And
they've clearly like analysed the trend, because what's really popular on iPlayer? I'm going to take we know it's Waterloo Road, I'm going to take a wild guess that during lockdown, in fact we know this is true, because during lockdown there was a huge Doctor Who resurgence where
there was the watch-alongs.
All the watch-alongs. How did Russell T plan this? Was he like, I've got a master plan to get Doctor Who back in my pocket, I'm going to start sinking all these seeds into the public, get the Russell T Davies era really nostalgic. Oh, Chibnall, not happy with Chibnall? I'm not suggesting that all this, but like like there's clearly a trend. I think the BBC there's a lot of factors to this. It's not just Doctor Who's doing bad. BBC's in trouble and they need to win back the public. Maybe it's a bit of a stretch to say about Waterloo Road as well. It could just be they know it's a profitable series, but both of those shows had a resurgence during lockdown. Now they're both coming back, I don't think that's a coincidence.
It is crazy that it's crazy to me to think that the BBC probably hoped, or maybe hoped, that the Jodie era would manage to elevate the show back to its previous heights, and I'm sure initially it looked like it was on its way to doing that.
Without a doubt, yeah.
Because it's like with the and then it would have been that Moffat was the one who nearly killed the show, if anything. But because it was such a massive downward swing in viewership and appreciation, and now Russell's coming back, there's this weird feeling of not only have we had this really strenuous. Hang on, sorry, I'm getting overwhelmed because it's like Russell Eras came to the end and it was like bright new future. What's in store for the future of Doctor Who? Over the years, starts dipping downhill. They try something, it dips even further. So they go, fuck it, get Russell back. And the idea that this, not only has Doctor Who just been dying for this past decade, basically, but that it could then resurge to what it was, feels basically surreal to me, because Doctor Who hasn't been what it was for 10 years at this point, or nearly 10 years.
For me, the show has felt off, or not quite right, since Series 6.
Yeah.
This is now Series 13 we're getting. That's
it's literally
over
10
half.
years
That's
since
over
2011.
half. And that's what I'm excited about, because I think, if you look at all the showrunners, Chris Chibnall, I don't think is maybe the best choice for showrunner, and I don't think he's the best writer the show's ever had, personally.
Yes.
I do like Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, though. I think that's a good episode.
I need to rewatch that.
But Moffat, a really good writer, like one of the best writers, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't actually know. Maybe he's not up for showrunner. Maybe he's not.
Either that or he took on too much at one time,
yeah.
perhaps. It's hard to say with his run.
And I don't think we'll ever know, and then Chibnall comes back. No, but with Russell T, I feel like he's a really good writer, but he also knows how to run this show.
Yes.
He understands Doctor Who mania. He's been saying all this time what the show should be doing, and he's probably right to an extent. And I think he understands that it's more than just the show. It's everything around it.
Yeah.
It's getting that hype. And if they start doing trading cards again, the thing is, that's another thing. When we were little, you had the sticker books and the trading cards and the toys. These days, that isn't so big.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if trading cards and stickers will still sell.
Yeah.
But like, I'd fucking buy them.
Yeah.
I have no. If they bought trading cards like the fucking packs, I would buy them in the co-op and I'd get judged for it. But I wouldn't care because it'd be fucking cool.
It'd be really nice.
Will we get that, or will it be more of a content-esque?
I'd love to think it could be what it was. Just I don't know if kids these days don't like action figures anymore or something.
There's a new one, isn't there? In the I'm just thinking of like when we were little. Trends like match attacks and then go crazy bones, and I feel like Doctor Who trading cards as a whole, and Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, are they still a thing? I don't know if they are.
We'd have to find out.
And like I know in the co-op they've got those like toy bags, haven't they? The other big go crazy bones, but they're different. They're like, you can buy one for £1, or you can buy like one for £1.50, free for like £1, and then like 10 for like £7, and it's, what kid has £7? I feel like this is clearly that industry dying out.
Yeah.
Because I know when the Doctor Who trading cards, you'd go in the shop and they'd be at the front. It's like £1 because they knew that kids would save a bit of their lunch money and just do it. Whereas this feels more like, if we do a big pack, maybe some like old lady will buy them for their kids.
Yeah, or potentially we're appealing to the collector's market, like the adult children kind of market. Because obviously I like to collect the figures. Purely one reason why I got so into it more recently is that often as a kid, I couldn't afford to get all the new releases. And so the fact that they are bringing out new stuff was exciting. But at the same time, the vast majority of figures that have been getting people excited recently are classic figures. The Jodie stuff is very underrepresented on the shelf.
I wonder, I feel like the BBC with Doctor Who, the show quality has maybe been dropping over the years, but their actual support for the show and like the show as a whole has actually been very good. Like Big Finish, all these, no one can see this, but all those DVD box sets that are sat right there, all the figures, there's a lot. And maybe Russell T is going to come on board and be like, yeah, that's great, but here's what you should be doing with the modern stuff. And maybe it will be a weird modern thing where it's, you have apps that like tell a story alongside the story, or like ARGs and stuff, because they have gone into that a bit. Maybe that's the future, but I think Russell T is going to understand the wider context of the show, and it's not just the show. There's a lot to it. Maybe we'll finally get a good Doctor Who video game. That would be crazy, but who knows?
That would be cool. I think at this point, because we've literally gone for over 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm getting very hungry.
Yeah, this has been one hell of a discussion. I didn't expect it to go for this long, but
Very good discussion, if I do say.
yeah, ultimately, I hope if you're still listening, you enjoyed. It's just a really interesting time, and I think it's news that's good, but brings just a whole lot to think about with it.
And who knows what the next bit of news that will be that we'll need to discuss. Will it be Series
Oh, man.
13 or will it be the next Doctor?